So better late than ever, I decided to express my thoughts on the Dead Space remake, and holy shit, what a fucking remake. Motive Studio really nailed the hell out of this remake in more ways than one. And like, if anything, this is totally how you do a remake. What's even more awesome about this remake was that the same year in 2023, the Resident Evil 4 remake also came out, and I couldn't possibly be any happier to see the horror game renaissance unfold before us. Silent Hill 2 was like a year away from then, and when both Dead Space and Resident Evil 4 got their own respective remakes, the horror genre was eating really good. I basically became aware of the existence of the remake when I was working at Home Depot near my home, and I was working one day and my cousin sent me a teaser for a game. I had no idea what I was about to see. When I saw it was the teaser trailer for what would be known as the Dead Space remake, man, oh man, I was super hyped. It was so fucking excited because at that point, the franchise has been dead for 8 years, and the last time we saw anything to do with Dead Space was way back in 2013 when Dead Space 3, and it was, for all intents and purposes, the black sheep of the original trilogy. Really, I feel what killed Dead Space in general was the super reliance on microtransactions, something which was becoming a trend in the gaming industry by the time 2013 rolled around, after that cliffhanger ending with DS3 with the DLC campaign. The franchise was just in limbo and didn't seem like likely to come back, and not to mention that DS4 was canceled on the spot and Vesperal Games went bankrupt after EA didn't see themselves having a future with them. And it sucks so much because DS3, even though it's like my least favorite game in the trilogy, it had a lot of things that made the future of the franchise have so much potential and expanding. During waiting for both the Resident Evil 4 and the Dead Space remake, the Callisto Protocol was another game I was waiting for because it was hyped up to be the next biggest thing since Dead Space. And when the game finally came to pass, I was so disappointed, instantly moved on to both Resident Evil 4 and the Dead Space remakes. And holy shit, those two games were absolutely amazing. Holy damn, I remember just playing these games so much that they literally became my entire 2023. I'll make another video on Resident Evil 4 remake, but this video is for the Dead Space remake, so on to it we go. I went into the remake completely blind and was not entirely sure what to expect, aside from knowing I would be playing on the USG Ishimura, which to this day is one of horror gaming's most recognizable locations, up there with Raccoon City, the Spencer Mansion, and Silent Hill. Speaking of the Spencer Mansion, it was reported that the Ishimura would be a fully explorable ship, and by going into this remake, I was so pumped to see exactly how that would be fleshed out in-game. I started the game on medium, and upon retrieving the plasma cutter, it was go time. When I encountered my first slasher, I saw that as the slasher took damage, I saw actual flesh being peeled off from each shot, and this was a reminder on the video docs that revealed that the Necromorphs would be having what would be called a flesh peeling system, which would make combat even more unsettling to witness. And I was like, holy damn, that's gnarly. And after like beating the game after I could say like 14 hours, I was just so blown away and was thinking, holy shit, this is what the Callisto Protocol should have been like. And I was just taken aback on how the remake blew the Callisto Protocol out of the water. And instead of the Callisto Protocol being the modern day Dead Space, it turns out the modern day Dead Space was, well, the Dead Space remake. And it is sad really because I was left wishing Callisto would be its own thing and actually achieve something unique, but that's another video for another time. The remake made a lot of improvements such as combat, which if you remember in the 2008 Dead Space, Isaac's melee was borderline bullshit to use and was more or less of a last resort attack. Here in the remake, Isaac swings like crazy, which gave me flashbacks to the two sequels, which amped up the melee animation. Speaking of combat, all the weapons from the original came back and are actually better than their 2008 versions. The plasma cutter is such a powerful weapon, especially on Impossible, which I'll make a video on later. It's so powerful that when it's fully upgraded, I can't see you not using any other weapon. Of course, the one gun achievement returns, which, to be honest, I decided to get the achievement on Impossible by using just the plasma cutter, because it felt appropriate to do so. It felt appropriate to do the achievement on that difficulty. My God, was it stressful because of the anxiety of the one life mechanic, which harkens back to the Dead Space 3's impossible mode. The pulse rifle has more of a punchy feel to it. Instead of whatever the hell that alternate fire was in the original, the pulse rifle has a grenade launcher, which is basically Dead Space 2's grenade launcher. The Ripper is super nasty and works like how you'd expect, given the flesh-peeling system. The Force Gun actually peels the flesh off of necromorphs, making them easier to take down. It basically is also useful for pushing back necromorphs and giving you breathing space. The flamethrower also returns and actually is useful this time. Instead of being a pointless weapon to use, it takes advantage of the flesh-peeling mechanic by burning the necromorphs down to their skeletal form, which again makes weapons like the plasma cutter and the pulse rifle able to take them down easily. The line gun comes back and sadly isn't as effective as it was in the original unless you fully upgrade it. The line gun's interesting because it has an alternate fire where instead of firing a waste of time mine that only exploded when there was no necromorphs around, it instead shoots out a laser mine that, if you use to your advantage, can be used as a trap against the necromorphs. Hell, you can shoot the laser traps onto objects and use kinesis to pick up said objects and use the lasers onto the necromorphs with lethal efficiency. Speaking of kinesis, it also got a massive upgrade because y'all remembered how wonky it was in the original? Well, guess what? It instead functions a lot like the Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3 kinesis, which makes throwing objects like spears and vent fans ammo savers, and especially on harder difficulties. Another thing that I loved was that given that the ship was now fully explorable, granted if you managed to unlock all the decks by the end of the game, there were rooms that were locked and could only be accessible if you managed to level up your security clearance, which is obtained when you progress through the game. Some of these locked rooms are found in earlier parts of the game and encourages the player to return later when they have the appropriate security clearance. I'm not gonna lie, when I found this out, I was so freaking blown away how much backtracking there was. So much so that the remake was basically like a Resident Evil game, except it was Dead Space. It made the Ishimura even more of a spaceship rather than just a harbinger of levels, which it was when you consider the fact that in the original, Isaac traveled around the Ishimura via the tram system. But in the remake, you can explore the Ishimura in its entirety to your heart's content. Another thing that the remake has going for it is its intensity director, which makes random enemy spawns happen literally anywhere on the ship, which, to be honest, made the game even more terrifying. Because now every time I come across a shop, ain't no telling if a necromorph will appear while I'm browsing the shop. That's how on edge I was throughout my first playthrough. This remake is hands down an amazing one. I couldn't be any happier that it was made. But really, that's where it all is dandy, because a Dead Space 2 remake doesn't appear to be in the cards, given EA's bullshit typical reliance on unnecessary things such as loot boxes and whatever. But I'm at least be optimistic and at least hope it comes around. And if it doesn't, oh well, at least we have ourselves an amazing remake. And again, holy shit, what a good time I had. This is Duke Sparrow, signing off.
I'm trying not to drown beneath the sound, but it's taking